new sensation from Braun has vibrating fingers to give you a gentle massage.
Oh, thanks for telling me.
Okay, I'm ready.
You're the one who bought the record.
Song.
Three words. First word.
Sounds like.
We're doing well.
Smell, stink, horrible, pong.
Pong.
Odor. Smell. Odor.
Smell? No, smells. Smelling.
Smelling.
Sounds like smelling. No.
Smelling.
Smelling, yelling. No.
Off.
Oh, cowpat.
Smelt.
What the actual?
Is it
the actual thing was smelling.
Smelt.
Perfume. No. Still smell.
Smelling. Smells. No. All right.
The
Second word.
Second word.
Small.
In. The.
Of.
With.
And.
As.
In. Smell of.
And.
Scent of a woman. Scent of a woman.
Like.
No.
Oh yeah.
In. Of.
The.
Oh, well. Smell the.
Something.
1 minute. Something the.
Third word, yeah.
Smell.
Elephant.
Elephant.
What?
Elephant?
The elephant.
Something
Song of the elephant.
Yes.
Elephant march. Song of the elephant.
Dumbo the elephant.
Nelly the elephant.
Nelly the elephant. Nelly. 2 minutes, and despite all my bias, it's a draw today. It's a draw, so honours are shared. So give each other a round of applause. Come on. All it remains for me to do is say thank you for watching. Please watch again, and please join me in thanking the guests: Tim Vine, Christopher Blake, John Leslie, and Victor Spinetti. Cheryl Baker, Lisa Maxwell, Julie Peasgood, Sarah Vandenberg. Thanks a lot for watching. See you soon.
Using newspapers to trace the past, the History Hour starts in 10 minutes over on BBC Two.
This Saturday night on BBC One, Mr. Humphries is showing off the goods at Grace Brothers.
I'm extra.
Jim goes hopping mad as the Generation Game ambushes more confused contestants. At 7, the house party's in full swing and Noel wastes no time grabbing everyone's attention. And we mean everyone. With a rollover jackpot estimated at £14 million, Mariah Carey stars in the National Lottery, hosted by Ronnie Corbett.
Why don't you join me this Saturday on the National Lottery? I've got my ticket.
Then in Casualty.
That's enough.
Tensions run high for the staff of Holby General at 8:10. And with a hunt for a mystery attacker in our film No One Could Protect Her.
I can be scared, but I can't be helpless.
That's the look of Saturday night on BBC One.
Now on BBC One, the 1 o'clock news with Edward Sturton.
More protests against cheap beef imports as farmers come to terms with the latest BSE regulations. Good afternoon. The farmers' protest is spreading and the government is warning of tough action to stop the blockade of ports. The other headlines: the chairman of the Royal Opera has resigned and the entire board is offering to go too. The conference on Nazi gold has ended with an attack on the Vatican for refusing to open its archives. This is how they did it. The year England won. Tonight we'll know who England and Scotland will face in next year's World Cup. And a surprise for Prince Charles among the homeless. One of them turned out to be an old school friend. The government has warned it will take tough action against farmers blockading British ports. Protests by Welsh farmers against imports of cheap Irish beef spread last night, and there have been demonstrations in Scottish and English ports. The farmers' anger has intensified following the government's announcement yesterday that it's banning the sale of beef on the bone. This morning, Downing Street confirmed that there'll be an official inquiry into the handling of the BSE affair. Chris West reports.
Meat traders at Smithfield continue to sell beef on the bone this morning. They say they've had no official warning not to. It'll be some weeks before the proposed ban will come into force. For the industry, it's another blow it can well do without.
Fair enough if the government want to say in their opinion, there is a danger of eating meat that is near the bone, fair enough, but they should give people the choice.
It's unbelievable because the British beef industry is renowned. I feel sorry for the poor farmer in England.
The announcement fueled resentment at the blockades mounted overnight by farmers protesting against the importing of Irish beef. There were demonstrations at all the main Welsh ports, on Merseyside and in Scotland. Some farmers are threatening to picket Dover tonight. They're angry that the Irish meat is allowed to circulate freely here, as in the rest of the EU, while their own remains subject to a BSE ban.
We can't honestly go on with a situation where others exporting product into Britain are supported by their governments through legitimate support measures when currencies change, and the British government refuse to do that. That's actually really not asking us to compete anything like on equal terms.
And you are to be congratulated.
Farmers' meetings are demanding action at the highest level. The government, however, has called their tactics unacceptable. As the demonstrations continue, Irish hauliers are demanding that they should be unhindered. They have the backing of their British counterparts.
Last year, when we saw action taken by animal rights protesters to block the transport of live cattle to and from the continent, the authorities acted speedily and rightly to keep the ports and the routes to the ports open. We want to see similar action of that kind taken in this case.
But at Banbury Market today, farmers were firm. If the Irish imports aren't bad enough, the bone-in beef ban is the final straw.
We're just gutted, really. I mean, it's just before Christmas when the butchers are looking to do some trade. We're looking to sell some beef for them.
Now, everything's gone rock bottom.
The Agriculture Minister says it's nowhere near a crisis.
Some of this reaction is exaggerated. 95% of beef is already sold with the bones removed. We're talking about 5% of joints only, and the suggestion that somehow deboning that is going to devastate the industry is frankly gross exaggeration.
Dr. Cunningham is meeting his Irish counterpart today. Downing Street confirmed there would be a wide-ranging inquiry into the whole question of BSE. Chris West, BBC News.
The World Jewish Congress has criticised the Vatican for refusing to open its archives on the amount of Nazi gold it handled during the Second World War. Jewish leaders say there's evidence that suggests the Vatican handled a huge amount of stolen money.
The Vatican is a great moral center of this world, in conformity with its own position in the world. I think for its own sake, it is of the utmost importance that it cooperate with this international moral and ethical effort to uncover the truth. I'm hopeful it will. Until now, we've had no reaction.
Well, our correspondent John Silverman is at the London conference on Nazi gold. John, what is the next step that's going to be taken in trying to persuade the Vatican to change its mind?
Well, I think we knew all along that the Vatican was going to come under pressure to open up its archives, and they've only sent 2 delegates here with observer status, so they haven't actually said anything at all at this conference. During the conference, they invited Lord Janner, who's the chairman of the Holocaust Educational Trust, to visit Rome. We understand he's going to take up that invitation, possibly before Christmas, and he'll obviously be pressing Vatican officials very strongly indeed to relax this 100-year rule, because if they don't, it'll be another 50 years before any of those wartime archives are opened.
Switzerland came to this conference with questions to answer. Has Switzerland persuaded people that it's doing all it can to deal with what happened during this period?
Well, it's persuaded a lot of people, but it hasn't persuaded the World Jewish Congress. And I suppose one would expect them to make most of the running. Most of the good lines to have come out of this conference have come from the WJC. They still maintain that Switzerland must go back on the agreement that it made after the war to pay a certain amount of money to the Jews, that that's not the end of this, that they owe an awful lot more money. But I think there are a lot of other countries who have disappointed people in the sense that they have not pledged money to the fund announced by Robin Cook, the Foreign Secretary, or indeed have said nothing at all. And some of the neutrals, like Portugal and Spain, other countries, I think will also come under pressure in the months ahead.
So, John, the conference is winding up. Overall, a success or not?
Well, the World Jewish Congress are saying, yes, it is a success. They're saying it's absolutely remarkable that the conference took place at all. I think we won't be able to judge the measure of the success until the report of all the proceedings is published probably in February. If by then a lot of countries have pledged money to Robin Cook's fund and a lot of countries have opened up their archives, then yes, it will be a success. If there is still a kind of silence, and if places like the Vatican are still refusing to open up their archives, then a lot of people will say much more needs to be done.
John, thanks very much indeed. Winnie Mandela has been answering publicly for the first time allegations made against her at South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. She's denied that she took part in murder and kidnappings and described as ludicrous claims that she'd ordered the death of Stompie Maketsi.
Finally, after 8 days of the most damning allegations against her, Winnie Madikizela Mandela arrived to take the stand herself. Many people here believe it's make or break, her reputation, both personal and political, at stake. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who heads the Truth Commission, greeted Winnie and her family personally, as if to emphasize that this is not a court of law and he is no judge. The Commission has to render an account of the past that will help people here understand what divided this nation for so long. Racism was the evil, and Winnie was at the heart of the struggle against it. With her husband languishing in jail and his movement banned, it was Winnie the people turned to.
What are you doing here, killing our people?
Even in the 90s, when give and take was the order of the day, Winnie confronted apartheid's henchmen head-on. Today she displayed the same defiance, only this time it's a servant of a free South Africa that challenges her.
I am not playing around.
Are you aware he's got
and
amnesty
I
for
will
that?
not tolerate you speaking to me like that. I will not. I am trying to give you answers to the best of my ability.
While many expected Mrs. Madikizela Mandela to make a general and political defense, she's opted to challenge her accusers detail for detail.
Richardson says he killed these two gentlemen on your instruction.
That is ridiculous.
Mrs. Madikizela Mandela knows that her performance today will be watched by the nation at large. It's the public she has to convince if she's to keep her political ambitions alive.
I don't love her or hate her, I just recognize her for what she's done. And I do recognize that as a person she has made mistakes, that I hope if she regrets what she has done, then we can always forgive and we'll continue to praise the work that she has done.
If even a fraction of what's been said about Winnie Madikizela Mandela is true, South Africans are bound to ask how this one-time heroine of the struggle became embroiled in its darkest, most brutal side. That's the question the Truth Commission has to answer in the end. George Alagaya, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Labour's blueprint for an education revolution will be published today. The education bill includes plans for 25 action zones, which will get special attention in the drive to raise standards. It's likely to be one of the key yardsticks by which the government's performance is judged. During the election campaign, Tony Bliar famously said his priorities were education, education, education.
What was the trick that they played on the giant?
Nottingham is one of several councils to have shown interest in having an education action zone. These involve giving special help to groups of up to 20 schools, primary and secondary, in poorer areas where results are below average. The zones will get extra grants of up to £500,000 and will become test beds for various innovative schemes, such as employing advanced skills teachers or releasing classroom time from the national curriculum to concentrate instead on the basics.
We'll be able to act swiftly where things are falling apart or failing. Above all, we'll be able to set a whole new pattern of working in the education action zones, which will transform the standards that people can expect both in primary and secondary school.
So if we go to the exercise on page...
Westgate Community College in Newcastle is a former failing school that's now greatly improved. Its principal believes action zones will help recognise the extra problems at inner city schools and says the extra money, though small, would make a difference. He particularly welcomes being freed from the national curriculum.
I think the national curriculum is too rigid for some children in a school like this. We want to build on basic skills. We want children who can read and so on and do their maths, but we're looking as well as the social skills and stickability and things like that, which this will encourage, and I'm very enthusiastic about that.
The education bill also makes it compulsory for schools to have homeschool contracts, in which schools set out their duties to children and pupils and parents promise to be punctual, well behaved and to do their homework. Mike Baker, BBC News.
The chairman of the Royal Opera House has resigned following yesterday's damning report from a Common Select Committee. Lord Chadlington was one of the managers branded as incompetent by MPs. The entire board have also offered to go. In the past hour, Lord Chadlington told our arts correspondent that the House needed a fresh start.
I believe that in circumstances such as these, where there's been a major public document criticising the way that the Opera House is run, it is right that the chairman should resign as a matter of honour. I've only been there a year, and many of the criticisms refer to many years before. But I think you must, in public life, show a lead, and that is what I'm doing.
And our arts correspondent Nick Hyam joins me now from central London. Nick, does what Lord Chadlington has done mean that the Royal Opera House accepts the justice of yesterday's criticisms?
I don't think it does accept the justice of all of them, no. Lord Chadlington himself feels that many parts of the report are unfair or misinformed in one way or another, but he has taken what he himself refers to as the Carrington option, referring back to the Foreign Secretary, Lord Carrington, who resigned during the Falklands conflict, even though he felt he wasn't himself responsible. He says it's the honourable thing to do for him to resign, but the board, who have also offered their resignations, are making it clear that they've every confidence in the Chief Executive, Mary Allen, although she also was heavily criticised by yesterday's Select Committee report.
Well, why is that? That does seem odd that she was criticised and is staying while they were criticised and are going.
Yeah, indeed, and she was told in the committee's report that her behaviour had not been appropriate for someone holding an important public office when she was Secretary General of the Arts Council. However, what the board and Lord Chadlington say is that if she were to go after only 3 months in office, she can't be held personally responsible for any of the previous mismanagement. It would destabilise the Opera House. It would take a long time to find a successor. It would simply make matters worse, and it would make it more difficult to resolve the crisis.
Nick, briefly, the next chapter in this saga?
Well, the next chapter is this afternoon when the remaining members of the board go and see the Culture Secretary, Chris Smith, whether he will want further changes, further reforms, whether he'll demand Ms Allen's plate, a head on a plate. I'm afraid we'll just have to wait and see.
Nick, thanks very much indeed. The time is 14 minutes past 1. Later in the programme, searching for a better way of looking after the frail and elderly, and the prince and the pauper. Charles meets an old school friend who's fallen on hard times. More and more elderly people need to go into homes which offer long-term care, and very often they have to pay the bills from their savings. This afternoon sees the establishment of a Royal Commission to look for a better way of funding care for the elderly in both residential and nursing homes.
Many elderly people manage with help in their own homes, but perhaps half of those heading off this morning for an age-concerned day centre may eventually need long-term care. And those who end up in residential and nursing homes often have to sacrifice their life savings to pay the fees. The state will only start to contribute when all but £16,000 has gone. Maureen Hatter has watched as her mother's savings have disappeared.
Not too special, not too special.
After her mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, the NHS said it could no longer care for her. Daisy, who's a war widow, does not know the state has abandoned her.
I think she'd be very sad and let down in a way, you know, because my father lost his life in the Second World War. And she was left to bring up 2 young children. And now when she needs help, she's not getting it.
And those running the homes say that even when social services do step in, there isn't enough to pay for the more demanding care needed for more dependent old people.
They are only willing to pay very minimal fees, whereas the registration authorities want higher and higher standards, and the people require more care.
Future generations may be able to build up their own funds or take out some form of insurance, and the Royal Commission is certain to consider these options. But for today's old people, those are not realistic choices, and it's difficult to see how the government can create a fairer system for them without spending more public money. Neil Dixon, BBC News.
The Prince of Wales was visiting homeless people this morning and bumped into an old school friend. Clive Harold once played football with the Prince at Hill House Prep School. He now lives on the streets selling The Big Issue magazine. He told the Prince his life had begun to fall apart when he lost everything 10 years ago.
With his Prince's Trust, Prince Charles has for many years been in the business of helping disadvantaged young people help themselves. Today he came to see how the big issue has proved equally successful in inspiring the homeless to get back on their feet. What he didn't know was that he had shared 2 years of his boyhood with one of those homeless people.
Do you really want to be at school again?
Clive Harold was in the same class as the Prince at Hill House Prep School in central London when they were both 5. His father was a millionaire and he'd been a successful magazine editor before falling on hard times.
My family home was in Lawson Place and Princess Margaret lived opposite, you know, and it was all up and running. He went to Gordonston and I went to Millfield, and it was, you know, and the idea that we would meet all, you know, 44 years later, and I'll be on the streets and he'd be obviously where he is now, it was strange. I said to him, I know you'll remember me. We were in a crocodile going down to play football. He said, no, actually, I don't. And because he's been through his own pain, and you know, and his life's taken all sorts of twists and turns, as mine has. We sort of had a meeting of minds.
Along with thousands of others, he's now been given a lifeline by selling the big issue. Vendors are given training and a sales pitch, and they then have to buy copies of the magazine, but are allowed to keep 60 pence profit from each one they sell. The philosophy shares a common theme with the Prince's Trust, that the most effective help is through enabling people to earn their own living.
The Prince's Trust and indeed his other organisations do mirror some of the work that we're doing, and it was a great honour to see him today and recognising that.
It may seem that the Prince is taking on the work with the needy and poor that Diana made her trademark. The truth, though, is that he's been involved in similar projects for many years, but it was always the Princess who attracted the most attention. Jenny Bond, BBC News, at the Big Issue in London.
As the negotiations at the Kyoto Conference on climate change grind on, business leaders have been meeting Tony Bliar in Downing Street to discuss how industry can help reduce gases which contribute to global warming. As our environment correspondent Margaret Gilmore reports, British industry is already spending millions of pounds planning for the effects of global warming.
Last week, flash floods devastated the Cornish village of Pentuin, destroying homes and the post office. Freak storms like this are becoming increasingly frequent. Britain's insurance companies believe they'll soon be costing them £250 million a year. 1 week on, the postmistress revisits her now uninhabitable home.
It's a shock to see your home just tossed around by the water, by the force of the water. Insurance underwriters like this man believe global warming's to blame for our increasingly unpredictable weather. He's off to the conference on global warming in Japan. He's to warn politicians that if they fail to set tough targets for reducing the polluting greenhouse gases we create, which in part cause it, then he believes we'll all suffer.
We believe climate change is happening and it will cost more in property damage, and therefore premiums will have to go up to cover that damage. We believe it's important to go to Kyoto and to make those facts known to the politicians and negotiators.
At Thames Water, David Cook's worrying how he'll maintain supplies in 30 years' time. Like many British companies, he's paying for information on the future.
It's really rainfall information and also river flow information which we can get from the rainfall. And using that we can determine whether or not we're going to need, for example, a new reservoir at some time in the future.
David Cook's going to Bracknell Weather Centre, where scientists now sell their findings on global warming to British companies. The Weather Centre computer makes 18,000 million calculations a second, one of the 3 biggest in the world. It shows that though the world warmed 1 degree centigrade in the past 100 years, it'll grow 3 degrees warmer in the next.
More and more people are now beginning to take it seriously. They're seeing the accumulating evidence and are beginning to think how it'll affect them and their business.
We do know global warming's getting worse, though the scientists can't tell exactly how drastic the changes in climate will be. But long-term forecasts are becoming more accurate. Ignoring them is a risk many companies are no longer prepared to take. Margaret Gilmore, BBC News at the Met Office in Berkshire.
The prospects of European health ministers reaching agreement today on the banning of tobacco advertising has been thrown into doubt. Spain has changed its mind and it now says it won't support a ban. Our correspondent Emma Udwin is in Brussels. Emma, Spain always in the past rather a supporter of a ban. Why has it done this somersault and what does it mean?
Well, it is puzzling. The Spanish Health Minister, Romer Beccaria, said that Spain was still in favour of a tobacco advertising ban, but that Spain was concerned about the position of some countries which would find themselves in the minority if a vote went ahead. They haven't spelt this out, but it's widely assumed that's a reference to Germany, which is the chief opponent of a ban. And the German health minister a short time ago did all but confirm to me that there have been some contacts with the Spanish. The big unanswered question is, if the Spanish have succumbed to some pressure from the Germans, what have they got out of it?
And where does it leave Britain in this rather confusing picture now?
Well, this was always going to be a knife-edge vote, and now the Spanish have defected from the pro camp. UK votes are all the more crucial. We have 10 votes that we can deliver. That may mean that there is greater leverage for the British Minister Tessa Jowell, who is calling for a 10-year period for Formula One to seek alternative sponsorship. But it's very clear that a deal can be done on that. Some of Britain's partners have said 10 years is completely unacceptable. They won't settle for anything longer than 6. So it leaves us, I think, with a picture, a real cliffhanger, where it may not be possible to get a deal on British concerns or on the advertising ban in general.
Emma, we'll have to wait and see. Thank you very much indeed. The Speaker of the House of Commons has again turned down requests from the two Sinn Féin MPs, Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness, to use parliamentary facilities. Betty Boothroyd had a brief meeting with them in the Commons this morning and later issued a statement saying it was their refusal to swear or affirm allegiance to the Queen that prevented them from taking their seats.
Sinn Féin's two MPs need an appointment to visit Parliament. Today it was with the Speaker, who says they'll be outsiders as long as they refuse to swear loyalty to the Crown. The Sinn Féin leaders don't recognise Parliament's authority in Ulster, and they don't want to take their seats. But they say the election gave them the right to use Westminster's facilities and mix with MPs.
It is no great thing for us personally, but in terms of representing our constituents, obviously this ruling is not just undemocratic, but it puts them in a very unfair and disadvantaged position.
The two MPs say it's a matter of principle. Others say they're milking this issue for propaganda. The Speaker's been standing firm, but today one of Labour's most senior MPs is calling on Miss Boothroyd to consider an oath of allegiance to Parliament to accommodate legitimate Republican objections, but also to call what he sees as Sinn Féin's bluff.
It prevents them going around having a propaganda victory if we actually give a choice on an oath to democracy and to the House, much as we have a choice on whether to affirm or whether to take to swear to God.
The meeting took less than an hour. The Speaker had turned them down, and Mr Adams was refusing to contemplate any oath in a British Parliament.
Well, I'm an Irish Republican. I mean, my allegiance and Martin McGuinness's allegiance, and more importantly, the allegiance of the people who voted for us, is to Ireland, is to the people of Ireland. And accommodation could have been found. It hasn't been. That's not good.
As the two MPs rejoined their supporters, the Speaker was issuing a statement, restating a position she said was rooted in the law. Whether or not Sinn Féin are more interested in propaganda than principle, they're now taking this fight to the European Court of Human Rights. Either way, their claim to be a legitimate political force will gain ground dramatically next week, when the Prime Minister greets Gerry Adams as a guest in Downing Street. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
The fate of 32 footballing nations, including England and Scotland, will be decided tonight when the draw for next summer's World Cup finals takes place in France. They will be divided into 8 groups, with the top 2 teams from each group going on to the knockout stage of the competition.
For the cynics who think that sport is becoming more like showbiz in shorts, tonight's draw will be an interesting experience. There'll be music, lights and action before a single name is drawn from the pots, and the whole extravaganza will be broadcast around the world.
And here in the Royal Garden Hotel, it's a festive soccer occasion.
Lots of things were different in 1966 when England won the Cup. In the black and white world, the draw was just that, a low-tech affair with none of the glitz of France '98. Football itself wasn't the global marketing opportunity it's become now, with everything from match balls to cups of coffee officially sponsored and supplied. Brand names will be prominent during tonight's event, but the organisers deny the commercialism is being overdone.
Having a draw that is spectacular and that contains a football match that talks about what it is all about really, which is the playing of football, is something I think that's pretty well essential in this day and age.
The exhibition match before the draw will be between Europe and the rest of the world. Gordon Durie of Scotland is playing alongside Paul Ince of England. All the coaches are in Marseille as well and enjoying the build-up.
And when I'm out of this job, I'll look back and reflect on this occasion as my first World Cup draw. The fact we qualified and we did so well qualifying. This is the niceties of the job. You know, these are the things you will look back and reflect on and say, well, that was quite enjoyable, yeah.
Football is claiming that the '98 World Cup will be the biggest television event of the 20th century. Tonight's draw will merely whet the appetite. Neil Bennett, BBC News in Marseille.
And that's all this Thursday lunchtime from the 1 o'clock news. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. There's a real change on the way, but before that we're going to have to endure a little bit more cold weather and certainly some frost tonight. Now we have high pressure sitting on top of us, hence the fine dry weather just about everywhere, but the high slips away, the isobars begin to pack in from the north, the weather systems are coming in from the Atlantic, so it's going to turn milder and windier and wetter just about everywhere as time goes on. In fact, those milder southwesterly winds are going to make themselves felt across Ireland and much of the north of the country during the course of the latter part of today and through tonight. Now on the radar we have a scattering of showers across eastern parts, little bits and pieces of rain beginning to show up in the Western Isles, and there's quite a lot of cloud actually across the north of the country, but in the south, especially the more western areas, there are some good breaks, and that's where the best of the sunshine is going to be. But some showers continuing to feed across the southeastern corner, a fair amount of cloud as we saw further north. We've also got some fog patches across into Ireland, and they've been very reluctant to clear. Most of them will, but the odd one I suppose could linger on, and we're also going to see that cloud continuing to thicken in the north and west of Scotland, with more and more of those outbreaks of rain coming along as the afternoon wears on. We're also going to find the showers become lighter and I think more scattered in that southeastern corner. A chilly afternoon though everywhere, best temperatures about 5 degrees. Now with reasonably broken cloud tonight, we will find a frost setting in I think this evening, but then as those winds increase and the cloud begins to thicken, certainly as far as much of Ireland and Scotland and northern England is concerned, those temperatures will tend to rise and there'll be some rain coming in to the north and west of Scotland, the far north of Northern Ireland by the end of the night. But further south with light winds and that broken cloud, we're going to end up with some patches of freezing fog. And right the way through the night, those temperatures will be below freezing across a good part of England and Wales, but as I said, rising further north. Tomorrow we see the rain eventually reaching the northernmost parts of the country, still some mist and fog patches in the south, rather reluctant to clear, and then by Saturday milder and fairly wet just about everywhere and an unsettled weekend. Over the weather show, somebody looking like me fishing in Ireland.
During the day, the leopard's silence is golden. But when night falls, that silence becomes a weapon deadly enough to make it one of the most successful predators. Now, using the latest infrared technology, this wildlife special captures on camera the big cat who does the lion's share of its hunting in total darkness. Meet the Leopard, Wednesday at 8 on BBC One.
The news here in the South-East now on BBC One with Charlie Figgis.
Anger grows among South-East farmers over the latest crisis to hit the beef industry, and hundreds queue for those mini masterpieces. Good afternoon. Farmers across the South-East will be holding meetings throughout today to discuss the latest crisis to hit the meat industry. The government report just published says farmers' incomes are down by 40%. The ban on the sale of beef on the bone has compounded the situation. In Banbury, many farmers were staying away from the town's cattle market.
On one of the biggest trading days before Christmas, the Banbury cattle market should have been full today. Instead, the stall stood empty. For those farmers who did turn up attempting to sell their cattle, there was anger and frustration.
The beef farmers have been pushed to the point where they can no longer do it. They've got no other option but to become aggressive.
We're just gutted, really. I mean, it's just before Christmas when the butchers are looking to do some trade. We're looking to sell some beef for them.
92.3, whatever the 90 pence, 80 and 80.
Young bulls like these should be reaching up to £700 each. Instead, farmers were getting just over half that amount today.
A lot of the farmers, certainly in the livestock sector, are facing very near bankruptcy levels with the price of stock. We've got stock in the beef sector that is at a 22-year low.
This afternoon, a mass meeting will be held here, where farmers will decide what to do next. Some have told me they plan to go to the southeast ports to join blockades of foreign beef. Jackie Bartley, Newsroom South-East at Banbury Cattle Market.
The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Paul Condon, has called for the power of instant dismissal of corrupt officers. Giving evidence to the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee, Sir Paul said he believed between 100 to 250 Scotland Yard officers were corrupt. Well, our Home Affairs correspondent Penny Roach joins us now. Penny, pretty damning indictment of his own force, isn't it?
Well, of some of his officers, yes. He said that the vast majority of them are brave, decent and honest people, but that around 200 officers are indeed corrupt and sometimes committing criminal acts. He said that's corrupting the force, and he also said it's very difficult to get at them because, of course, they're cunning, he said, and they've been taught in the police tactics, so their training teaches them how the police are trying to catch them.
So how does he want the disciplinary system to be changed?
Well, first of all, this power of instant dismissal, which he says would only be used in perhaps half a dozen cases a year, but they would be the very serious gross misconduct cases where the evidence was strong. He also would like to see police officers not having the right to silence. At present, in disciplinary procedures, they still enjoy that. And he wants the burden of evidence moved away. At the moment, it's the criminal burden of evidence that has to be proved in a disciplinary case, so that's beyond reasonable doubt. He wants to see that reduced to the civil burden of evidence, which means the balance of probabilities.
So at the moment, he says that he can't get rid of bad officers.
He's saying he's got a real problem with that, and indeed he went on the record today admitting that some bad officers have been retired on full pension just to get them out of the force.
Penny Root, thank you very much indeed. Nearly 3/4 of prisoners at Pentonville Prison in North London are denied access to work or education. That's according to a damning new report from the Chief Inspector of Prisons. Sir David Ramsbottom said the regime is impoverished.
The unannounced inspection in April revealed 75% of the 942 inmates in Pentonville Prison in North London were locked up for an average 23 hours a day. They had no access to work or education, and the Governor says the problem is money.
We think there are things that can be done to help people to return to society to live a better life. It does cost money, and it will have to be taken step by step. And in the end, the taxpayer has to make a decision as to the balance of what he wants his prisons to do.
But schemes like this art class were praised, although only 115 prisoners can attend, and only 120 places are available for remand prisoners in the workshop. They're taught how to make sheets, and it's a perk.
It is a bit mundane, but it's better than being stuck in the cell, really. But yeah, I can't really say I enjoy it, but you earn a few quid as well, so that helps.
However, the report says many solutions are outside the hands of the prison management, saying the government's policy of locking up so many offenders has to be examined. Sarah Lockett, Newsroom South-East.
Now it's the arts world's answer to the National Lottery, and hundreds have been queuing up, some all night, to take part. The Royal College of Art is holding its annual sale of postcards, all original works, some by great artists. The big secret is which ones.
They've spent hours in the cold and all to buy a postcard. 2,000 are on sale for £35 each. Many are by unknowns, a few are by great artists. Just which is a closely guarded secret.
Everybody's a winner, but assuming I get something, even one, I'd be very happy.
I am very keen, and I've just got a feeling that all the sort of ones I want have gone.
It's the beginning of connoisseurship for a lot of people. It makes the actual possession of works of art possible. Most people wander around exhibitions and think, you know, this is not me. Now it suddenly becomes possible.
Sir Eduardo Palozzi is one to look for, and when the names are put to the pictures next week, these buyers may have a picture worth hundreds of pounds on their hands. Heather Lima, Newsroom South-East at the Royal College of Art.
Now it's a chance to become a real-life waxwork at Madame Tussauds. Your mission, to become a stand-in for James Bond. Auditions are being held at the museum today, and Paul Curran turned secret agent and tried his hand at raising one eyebrow.
Looking like a Moss Bros convention, the would-be James Bonds waited in line for their chance to fill 007's shoes. The Pierce Brosnan figure has been taken off his usual stand for the day. He needs a bit of a brush-up after some of his fans got a little too intimate.
Groping's not something we encourage
encourage, but we do let visitors get really close up to the figures, put their arms around them, have their pictures taken, that kind of thing. So he's come in for a bit of attention, shall we say.
The hopefuls, me included, had to impress a panel of judges, including a couple of Bond girls.
There aren't really many men in this world that can live up to Bond. So when you find somebody like that, you want to just grab onto him and hold him tight.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
No. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Bond.
Sorry,
but
sorry, Bond.
Not
on
enough.
this occasion.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, thanks for your time. So it's back to the day job.
A definite thumbs down, I'm afraid. What about Michael Fish? Were you in the queue?
Hello there. Well, it looks like rather more in the way of showers. We've seen some showers coming down across the region during the course of the day. One or two more, I think, coming along from time to time this afternoon, and a bit of a chilly breeze, but some sunshine as well. And then the showers perhaps just pecking the coast this evening. Otherwise, inland, fine, frosty, one or two fog patches. A fine day to come for most of us tomorrow, but still rather chilly and milder in the days ahead. That's your weather.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. And that's just about it for now. In the main programme tonight, it looks like they've got it all. Success, looks, independence. But these women all say there's one vital element missing. They can't find a decent man. Where are they all, we ask? Well, you can find out more about that at 6:30 tonight. Our next bulletin is just after 2:40 on BBC Two. From now, though, from us all, a very good afternoon.
This week in 999 Lifesavers, a prized possession becomes a floating inferno.
One of the cylinders exploded. Came past me like a rocket and just...
Good afternoon. There's to be a wide-ranging inquiry into the whole BSE crisis. The government announced the move today amid growing confusion over the latest scare involving cattle bones.